An American asked a Brit, "Where's the restroom?" The Brit smiled politely and said, "The loo, of course." Later, the American found a sign that said, "Gentlemen," and thought it was a fancy gentleman's club. Hours later, still lost, they finally realized loo just meant the bathroom. Americans swear it's a linguistic trap. A Brit invited an American over for tea. The American arrived with iced tea, lemonade, and snacks. The Brit frowned. "No, just tea. Hot, black, simple." The American offered a toast to tea. "But make it fun," the Brit muttered. Next, they put ice in the kettle. Misunderstandings of tea etiquette continued to confuse everyone. An American said, "I love chips," and a Brit handed them crisps. Confused, the American replied, "No, I meant fries." The Brit pointed at the plate of fries. "Those are chips here." The American sighed, realizing that in the UK, everything edible has at least two names, and fries are secretly called chips. Culinary chaos ensues. At a British pub, an American asked for a round of drinks. The bartender asked, "Which round?" The American laughed. "All of them." The Brit shook their head. "No, mate, just one round. You buy for the group." Americans never learn. Pub rules are an enigma wrapped in frothy beer. An American asked, "Do you have a parking lot?" The Brit replied, "Car park." Naturally. Hours later, the Americans saw no parking signs everywhere. "What do they want me to do?" "Walk." Meanwhile, locals strolled casually. Cars lined neatly. Cultural translation. Americans think signs are strict rules. Brits see them as polite suggestions. A Brit said, "Fancy a biscuit?" The American thought they meant something sweet. They eagerly bit into it only to realize it was savory. "You call this a biscuit?" The Brit smiled. "We do. Enjoy." Americans leave confused, questioning their entire understanding of dessert. The sweet versus savory struggle continues. An American bought a jumper in London expecting a little robot toy. Instead, they got a sweater. "Why is it called a jumper?" they asked. The Brit shrugged. "Because it jumps onto you." Americans concluded British English is a comedy language designed to trick tourists. During a conversation, an American mentioned the boot of their car. The Brit asked, "Do you have a fashion problem?" The American laughed, realizing Brits call the trunk a boot. From that day, every roadside chat was a comedic guessing game. Is it storage, fashion, or footwear? A Brit asked an American. "Do you mind?" The American replied, "Yes, I mind." The Brit blinked. "I meant, can I borrow this?" Americans are often puzzled by British politeness. A question rarely means what it sounds like. Confusion breeds laughter and eye rolls. An American complimented a Brit's flat. The Brit said, "Thanks. It's a bit small." The American laughed. "Small? This is huge." They soon realized small in British terms can be anything smaller than a castle. Americans learned that understatement is Britain's secret weapon in humor. An American reached for a pudding at a British shop and expected chocolate dessert. The Brit handed a bowl of jelly. The American blinked. "Is this dessert or a snack?" The Brit grinned. Americans slowly learned that British desserts are unpredictable and often wiggly. An American asked, "Can I get a soda?" The Brit said, "We call it fizzy drink." The American replied, "Yeah, that's what I said." The Brit pointed at the shelf-labeled pop. Hours later, the American concluded British beverage language was invented purely to create awkward moments in supermarkets. An American asked, "Where's the elevator?" The Brit said, "Lift naturally." The American nodded confident, then noticed a small hand-operated lift in a tiny boutique. "This is manual." The Brit laughed. Americans realize British English includes gadgets that are charmingly old-fashioned. An American asked, "Where can I find the garbage?" The Brit said, "Bin, mate." The American frowned. "Bin like metal container?" The Brit nodded. "Exactly." Americans slowly learn that everything is renamed in Britain to sound posh or confusing, even trash. And yes, bins are suddenly a topic of cultural debate. An American said, "I need a stroller." The Brit raised an eyebrow. "Pram, mate." The American pointed at a sleek modern stroller. The Brit smiled. Americans quickly discover that baby terms across the pond are linguistic adventures. An American said, "I'll park in the driveway." A Brit replied, "You'll park where?" The American explained, "The car would sit on a private road leading to the house." The Brit laughed here. A driveway is where you play badminton or have a garden, not park a car. Americans slowly realize British words are like riddles. An American asked for directions to an apartment block. The Brit pointed to a row of terrace houses. "Those are flats." The American laughed. "Flat? Really?" Americans soon learned that in Britain, housing is always a riddle wrapped in polite words. A Brit offered bangers and mash to an American. The American hesitated, imagining some futuristic sausage gadget. They took a bite and chewed slowly. "It's just sausages and mashed potatoes." The Brit nodded. Americans now know British meals often sound fancy, but reality is comfort food with a British accent. An American asked where to buy pants. The Brit handed over trousers and socks. The American laughed. "Are pants not pants?" The Brit smiled. Americans gradually realized that British clothing words are a clever test of patience. An American saw a British queue and tried to cut in. A Brit calmly said, "You must wait." The American tried arguing. "It's not even that long." The Brit smiled. "It's about respect, not length." Americans often leave puzzled. Realizing patience and politeness are cultural superpowers across the pond. An American said, "I want a cookie." The Brit handed a rich tea biscuit. The American asked, "Sweet or savory?" The Brit chuckled, "Sweet." Mostly. Americans slowly understand that every snack in the UK comes with a tiny twist of confusion. An American asked for a sidewalk. The Brit said, "Pavement." The American muttered, "Why not just call it a sidewalk?" A passing Brit winked. "Because it's fun to confuse tourists." Americans discover that British words aren't just vocabulary. They're practical jokes disguised as language. An American asked, "Where's the gas station?" The Brits said, "Pearl Station." The American nodded, then drove around looking for gas. Hours later, they realized that the Brits measure fuel, but call it petrol. Americans leave with less fuel in the tank and more in laughter. An American asked, "Where's the flashlight?" The Brit smiled. "Torch." Naturally. The American turned it on and accidentally lit the curtains on fire. The Brit laughed calmly. Americans realize British gadgets may have different names, but the danger level is universal. An American said, "I'll call the cops." The Brit frowned. "You mean the police?" The American laughed. "Yes, the same thing." The Brit replied, "We don't call them cops. We just say police." Americans leave realizing that slang is a cultural minefield and British straight talk is a comedy show. An American visited a British pub and asked for a hamburger. The bartender said, "You mean beef burger?" The American nodded. The Brit added, "With chips?" The American replied, "Of course." Later, confusion arose when the chips were actually fries. Americans slowly learned that food names are a never-ending adventure in the UK. An American asked, "How do I call the elevator?" The Brit smirked. "Push the lift button." Obviously, the American hesitated, imagining a voice-activated magic box. The Brit shrugged. Americans slowly realized that British simplicity can feel comically cryptic. An American said, "I need a diaper." The Brit handed a nappy. The American held it up. "Is this fancy underwear?" The Brit laughed. "For babies." Americans are left wondering if British parenting terms are deliberately tricky for laughs. An American saw a football game in the UK. They exclaimed, "Where's the ball?" The Brit laughed. "It's right there, mate." The American realized American football and British football are worlds apart. Every kick, pass, and goal becomes a cultural comedy show. An American picked up crisps at a British shop. They thought, these must be potato chips. The Brit laughed. Exactly, but don't call them chips or we'll look confused. Americans conclude that snack time in Britain is a comedy routine disguised as grocery shopping. An American asked a Brit, "Can I have some fries with my burger?" The Brit handed a plate of chips. The American frowned. These aren't fries. The Brit shrugged. They are to us. Americans slowly learned that in Britain, even the simplest foods have names designed to confuse outsiders. An American asked, "Where's the bathroom in your flat?" The Brit said, "Down the hall opposite the loo." The American muttered, "I thought the L was the bathroom." The Brit smiled. Americans realized that in the UK, words are playfully misleading, and asking for directions can be an adventure. An American said, "I'm cold. Can I turn on the heater?" The Brit laughed. "We call it a radiator, mate." The Americans stared at the panel of knobs. "Radiator, really?" The Brit nodded. Americans discover that even home heating in Britain comes with a side of comedy and confusion.